please join me for the Pledge of Allegiance.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Before we start the meeting, I would like to just take a moment of silence to remember Duncan McPherson and all of the contributions that he has made to Greenville. So please join me. Thank you. Now I'd like to move us on to our agenda. I need a motion to approve the agenda for the business meeting of January 8th, 2024.
Kelly and Jim?
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
We have some accolades, and I'm going to turn it over to Mike Bennett, and I see some of the students and parents, so without further ado.
Yes, thanks, Tracy. I would like to just take this opportunity before I read a prepared statement from Mr. Meredith and Dr. Bellino. I am really so proud of the kids for their involvement in this Melodies of Christmas. I think it is a very talented group of folks that we've got here in Greenville in our music program. I have a lot of high praise for our faculty and staff who are part of that. But it's really been great to watch the kids grow and to see the numbers grow as we move through Greenville Central School District. So at this point, I would like to just read a prepared statement, first from Dr. Bellino and then from Mr. Meredith. First, this past December, several of our student musicians from Greenville High School performed in the annual Melodies of Christmas show at Proctor's Theater in Schenectady. Each year, this is a televised event produced by CBS 6, raises money for the Melodies Center of Childhood Cancers and Blood Disorders at Albany Medical Center. To date, in collaboration with CBS 6, Price Chopper, Market 32, Freihoffers, over $10 million have been raised through this event. Following a highly competitive audition process involving students from over 75 public and private schools throughout eastern New York, western Massachusetts, and southern Vermont, 10 of our students were chosen to participate in this meaningful event. We are also proud of their accomplishments and commitment to the music and sharing their gifts with our community, near and far. So at this point, I'm going to read off a number of our students. If you could just stand as I call your name if you're here. First, congratulations goes to Clara DeLong, Anthony Zhang, Brendan Hawkins, who are all members of the Symphony Orchestra. And Ava Bryant, Cecilia Bucci, Scarlett Coons, Layla Overbaugh, Michael Samaska, Gigi Stewart, and Amara Thompson, who are all members of the Melodies Chorale. Bravo to all of you. Thank you. And now from Mr. Meredith. I think the 2023 Melodies was the highest Greenville Central School participation I've seen. I can't recall ever having 10 GCS students and one faculty member, Dr. Bellino did step in and play the trumpet, perform in this amazing concert. It was a spectacular year, and again, bravo. So again, thank you to our students and our faculty and staff for a job well done.
In fact, there is a link. I am looking on Board Docs, I believe, just showing the recording. Is that correct? Yes. So for anyone that would wish to see it that did not watch it on the 24th or 25th of December. it really, kudos to everyone, because we had 10 students in an extremely competitive arena where students compete for those positions. So bravo to everyone. And now we have more accolades, and this time for the International Baccalaureate Diploma Program. We're going to turn it over to Kendall Fritz, who is going to share some wonderful news and recognition for students that have received their diploma.
Hello everybody, good evening. I am Kendall Fritz. I am one of the school counselors here. I'm a K-12 school counselor, and I'm also the coordinator for the AP and IB program. I am excited to be here tonight. It's a wonderful night each year that I get to be here to represent GCS in my role and to express our pride in 3 students this year from the class of 2023. These 3 students fulfilled requirements for the full International Baccalaureate Diploma, and we are incredibly proud tonight and happy because they are all here and scattered throughout the crowd. We have Emma Cardamone, Scott Duncan, and Catherine Zamaska. So I'd like to just say a few words and then welcome them up here to receive their diploma. So for those of you who are unfamiliar with the requirements of the full diploma, it is important to note that it is the most rigorous program that we offer academically. So these 3 students chose a pathway that they knew would come with sacrifices and an increased workload, to say the least, but also the opportunity to learn from varying perspectives and to focus on growth through more than just academics. So my hope is that they left GCS feeling prepared and balanced with an understanding of their own personal growth. I know that I don't just speak for myself when I express my pride in these students, and I want to share a few words from their theory of knowledge teacher, Chris Carl, who couldn't be here tonight but really wishes he could be, and as an English teacher is better at his words than me, so why not just let him sum it up. So these are his words. Those kids chose the highest mountain to climb in the landscape and climbed it, with a combination of guts, grace, and gusto. I was impressed every day by their tenacity and will. There was never a day that they didn't work hard in TOK, and yet there was also never a day they didn't smile. I valued the 2 years I spent with them so much. That was just in a text to me, so I'm sure if he was here it would have been even more. So I said, well, I'm putting that in my speech because that sounds better than anything I wrote tonight. But I couldn't agree with Mr. Carl more. This is the kind of group, these 3 kids, that as an educator you value, because you know when you meet them that you're going to learn a lot from them too, and you're going to grow as an educator, which I really feel that I did, and the 3 of these kids just have so many wonderful things about them. Emma graduated, began her studies at Ithaca College. If you know Emma, she is an incredible artist. Her art literally moves me. It's incredible, and I'm not one of those people who knows a lot about art, but if you see it, you know what I mean. And she's a complete genius on the computer, so needless to say, she never needed any of my help with things. I usually was asking her to help me with things. Scott is currently attending the Albany College of Pharmacy. Anyone who knows Scott knows that he has a thirst for knowledge, can carry on a conversation about just about anything. Catherine is currently studying at SUNY Albany. She just told me she switched her major to music and is thinking about education, so just come on back, Catherine, we'll take you. Her work ethic has always impressed me. She is one of those kids who took every moment to work hard up until the last moment of every exam she had, and these full diploma kids had a lot of them, and she worked hard. Congratulations to these full diploma students of the class of 2023. Come on up to receive your full diplomas.
One, two, three. Okay. I know.
Emma, before you leave, I always like to put people on the spot and ask if there's anything that you would change or ask the board about. What did it mean to you personally?
The program? I mean, yeah. So I think doing this program was very beneficial for me as I found out when I got into college. Because of the credit and the workload, definitely it was accurate to how college was, but I think the structure of it was very different. And I wish I knew a little bit more of that before going into it, because the way that I went through my routine and did all of my schoolwork and learned in high school with the IB diploma was very different than how it would be in college. But I think the struggle and just the way that it turned out was very similar. So I would, I guess moving forward, maybe just a suggestion, I think understanding what all the work looks like, maybe looking at a lot more sample work for future students, giving them a lot to look at and giving them maybe sample classes, telling them to think about how it's going to be for them at the specific school they choose, the specific major they choose. I think that you should think about your future very coincidingly with your IB diploma, because I think they do tie together, but you have to make sure that they tie together the right way. So thank you for giving me the opportunity to take this program, because I think it did help me a lot, but it was definitely very different than what I expected. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Not for the other two students, but are there any words or anything that you'd just like to share with the board? Come on up, and then just make sure that the blue light is on. Thank you.
I think that this was a very good learning experience for me, but I also do think that like requirements to take the IB diploma program, or like just making sure students understand that when they like skip a class to go into like an IB class, like kind of what that means, because I didn't take Algebra 2 and I didn't take chemistry, which not only made it really difficult going into IB math, but also going into college calculus and taking chemistry at the college level with no like background knowledge of it, made it extremely difficult for me to like grasp the concepts that they were just going at such a fast pace, because most of the students had already like expected to have taken that coursework before. And also just the way that IB is set up, and I really did enjoy like the concept and like the things that I learned through IB. I think that the way that it's set up is, at least for me, has been a really different experience than what like college has actually been like. At least just like the way that it's taught, because like in high school, like the teachers would like go over and over like a concept, making sure like the whole class understood it, and like chunks of time would be dedicated to like one concept. Whereas in college, you kind of just go in and like they just talk at you for an hour and 15 minutes, and then the very next class they don't speak anything about the last class, but they just continue moving on and moving forward. So I think that the pacing has also been what I've experienced and noticed was different. And the workload was a lot more, I feel, for IB. So I am proud that I did this accomplishment, but I feel that it didn't completely like encapsulate like what the college experience would be like, kind of. But I do think that like it was really good, and the fact that like I kind of did learn time management skills and how to get all my work done on time, which did like those skills did transfer over, and so did the credits and just the knowledge I got from that. But that's kind of all I want to say.
Thank you.
Thank you. We appreciate the feedback. Scott around, or did he? Come on back. And I think part of the reason that I asked the question is we're a small school, and yet we have an IB program. And so I think it's something that we're very proud of. And there's always room for improvements, and also to personalize it. What did it mean to you?
So I think the IB program is very helpful.
You might want to go to that
Oh,
one.
yeah.
We can hear you, but on the tape they can't. That's
Oh.
why.
So I think that the IB program was very helpful for me personally, especially going into my first semester, which is also at a very small college that's very specialized in what they teach and what they do. A lot of the IB diploma, or for a lot of the IB classes, self-study was something that I really had to do, because I feel like if I was taking Regents courses, a lot of that outside of class time wouldn't have been needed for learning the material, but for IB it definitely was due to the rigor and the challenge of the material that was presented. So that really helped me going into my first semester at college, where a class like chemistry was almost something that I had to do completely by myself, because lecture didn't really help me at all with any of the material. That's all I have to say.
Thank you. Thank you. I'm going to move us on to the open forum. So the Greenville Central School District wishes to facilitate public access to meetings of the Board of Education and to provide an opportunity for the public comment at these meetings. Accordingly, the open forum provides an opportunity for members of the public to share thoughts about topics on the agenda. An individual's comments shall be limited to 5 minutes. Additionally, comments may be emailed to the district clerk, Daphne Pearson, using the email pearsond@greenvillecsd.org. In order for an email to be read during the meeting, it must be received by 4 p.m. on the day of the meeting and state in the email if it is to be read out loud. Emails should be limited to approximately 600 words. If there's anyone that would like to come and speak, we just ask that you state your name for the record. So is there anyone that would like to speak? Just please come up to the podium, ensure that the blue light is on, and thank you.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Matthew Marlowe. I'm the first assistant chief of the Medway-Grapeville Fire District, where I serve as a firefighter and have for the last 13 years. I'm a state fire instructor assigned here to Greene County, and I'm charged with the training of both new firefighters and some of the old ones as well. I see a couple of the students that I've had here tonight. I'm a resident and a property owner here in the town of Greenville. My 2 oldest children attend the middle school and the elementary school. As you may be aware, volunteer fire departments across New York State are currently waging an existential war against declining volunteer numbers. The alarms started to sound concerning this crisis some years back, but we can ignore it no longer. It is not a coming crisis, it is here. Where once fire companies had large memberships to respond readily at moment's notice for any emergency that might arise in their jurisdiction, we find ourselves now doing more and more with less and less. Trucks that were designed to hold 8 now respond with half that number. Mutual aid agreements, which were reserved for the most dire emergencies and the largest fires, are now standing agreements that as soon as one agency has an alarm, the surrounding departments begin heading that direction anyway. On quiet days at my house, I can hear 4 sirens go off simultaneously in Greenville, Freehold, Medway-Grapeville, and Westerlo. Why? Because all of them have to respond to that same emergency. The staffing crisis is here. I have seen it firsthand, both as a member in a fire company as well as an instructor of firefighters. Our numbers are dwindling. I have seen fewer and fewer applications for membership come in, and when I instruct, the class sizes are getting smaller and smaller. And you might ask, why is that? Well, our role as emergency responders has grown from simply putting out fires to becoming an all-hazards service, dealing with car accidents, emergency medical calls, brush and forest fires, ice and water rescues, and even storm mitigation and cleanup. The hours that we are called away from family and work, if we're fortunate enough to have an employer who will allow us to leave during working hours, all begin to add up. The training has not let up. State mandates and just plain common sense would dictate that the hours of training that our volunteer fire service membership go through would meet and exceed the demands that the role places upon us. The fire doesn't know and doesn't care if the person who's fighting it is paid or volunteered. The skills necessary to mitigate the hazard are the same. Those hours of training, however, the travel to classes, it all begins to add up. A recruit firefighter spends 79 hours in a basic exterior course and another 49 hours on top of that to receive their interior qualifications. 128 hours of training just to get in the door. I sat and tallied the amount of hours that I've sat in the classroom over my 13 years of service, and it comes to just shy of 1,000 hours, which I think New York State ed law says a 7th to 12th grader has to have 990 hours of contact. So I just like to think I served my 13th year of high school learning the fire service. The draw to membership in a volunteer fire company that once existed is not there as much as it once was. Now, we can lament the loss of civic pride or a shirking of duty, but that sort of navel-gazing doesn't solve the problem. New York State has recently taken steps to address this crisis as they received the report, as many of you may have read, in 2016, that the volunteer fire service in New York State saves taxpayers on the order of $3 billion. The cost of moving to an all-paid service. I think our taxes are high now. What happens when the pool of volunteers completely dries up and the move must be made to a paid fire service? And as one who is supremely proud to call myself a volunteer firefighter, I fear that day. The most drastic step that New York State has taken in recent years is the proposed resolution that is on your agenda to grant a partial real estate tax exemption to qualifying volunteer firefighters. Is this the silver bullet that is going to solve our staffing crisis? No. Is it a tool that I, as a chief and an instructor and as a resident of the town of Greenville, would plead for you to give to the fire companies that serve your district? Yes. You might ask, what is a qualifying member? I can only speak for my fire company. But an active member in my company is one who has served out at least a year-long probationary period, has attended drills and details response to calls, and receives formal training. My conscience, as a chief in that company, does not permit me to give the title active to anyone who would be a danger to themselves or others at an emergency. And so any benefit that might be granted would be going to individuals who have given far more of themselves than any exemption would ever possibly recoup. Please, give our fire companies this recruiting tool. To be able to say, yes, I know the hours are long, I know the training is difficult, I know the work is dirty, and I can't pay you a cent for it, but if you stick it out for the next few years, you can get something of a tax break from the biggest number on your tax bill. That would be game-changing for us. Give our fire companies this retention tool to look at the membership that has put in the time, has acquired the training, does get up at all hours of the night to do the work, and is asking if it's worth it to keep going. Say to them, we honor the sacrifice that you've made, and not just with words. There's a tremendous opportunity in your hands to play a part in addressing the crisis that confronts the volunteer fire service that everyone in this room and everyone in this school district desperately depends on. Thank you for your time, thank you for your service, and thank you for giving this resolution the thoughtful consideration that it deserves.
Thank you very much. Is there anyone else who would like to speak?
I know Matt's going to be a hard sell to follow, and I'm sure the board got the letter. My name's Cliff Powell. I'm chairman of Greenville Fire District #1 here in Greenville, and I'm a 50-year plus member in the Greenville Volunteer Fire Company, an active member still. As you are aware, New York State has passed legislation for a tax credit for members of volunteer fire and EMS services who qualify under the guidelines set forth. I know in talking with the assessor's office in Greenville that the Greenville School District has not taken action on this matter so far this year. When it was brought up last year, the Board of Education deferred action on this matter until this year. As the year is closing and there has been no action taken, I would request that the school board revisit the tax credit issue so it can be implemented as soon as possible. The county, most towns, if not all within the school district, and fire districts have all passed resolutions to provide an incentive for volunteer firefighters and EMS. who meet the requirements to qualify for the 10% tax exemption. It may be about money and where it will come from. As you know, with other exemptions, it will be absorbed by the others in the school district. But I feel if the other taxing districts feel the need, the school district should be able to step up to the plate also. I know Greenville Fire has approximately 10 members that will qualify at this time. Out of them, only 2 submitted paperwork last year and were advised to hold incentives that the state gives the volunteers is only $200, and that would be more than they would realize from just the volunteers without the school district. Needless to say, volunteer members put in many hours of meetings, trainings, drills, time for community events each year. Along with this, they are there to answer the call and help with services 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 days a year, no matter the weather condition, family gatherings, and the like. These responses are not only for their district residents, but the towns and villages and neighboring towns and people passing through, but also all the Greenville Central School District, its staff, and above all, the children who attend your facility. Be the call for fire, EMS, or plain old alarm drops at the school. The responses have been during school hours, at school events, nights, and any time the need arises. Therefore, it is my hope that Greenville Central School District will revisit this matter and take the action giving these dedicated professional volunteers the maximum tax break they so deeply deserve for unwavering volunteer to the school district and students, faculty, facilities, and members of the public that use the school facilities, for whom these volunteers serve loyally with no compensation. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Good evening, everybody. My name is James Bucci. Just want to make a quick thought about Mr. McPherson. I agree that it was good for a moment to silence it in. Always see eye to eye with him on a lot of things, but I saw him here at many meetings. He was always prepared. He always had good questions. He always was very knowledgeable about the topics, and I really appreciated that. And for those that may not know him outside of the school board of this area, he was involved in a lot of other capacities and always dedicated, whether it be to the church or other people. And I did appreciate that about him very much. So just wanted to say that quick word. Second, in regards to the topic that's been brought up for the EMS workers, I've been very critical of the school spending, budgets, et cetera, in the past. So I felt like I would not be doing right when it came to this emotional topic. In a sense, hopefully after I speak quickly, the EMS workers would still respond to me at my house, even though I'm going to probably be a little bit not for any tax breaks, etc. I've had personal experiences, and so has family, with EMS, and they've always been awesome, very impressive. But it does seem like this would be a bad precedent, as far as I can see it, to play favorites in some sense from one taxpayer to the other. While they do amazing work and they're not compensated as volunteers, there are a lot of volunteers in different capacities in different areas of the community that, while it may not be in an emergency situation, so to speak, those people are also not compensated or have tax breaks and things of that nature. So while it's difficult to say, I would like to see that everyone be treated fairly when it comes to that. And I believe that the issues that were stated earlier about the lack of participation, I don't believe that there's going to be a significant increase in participation for EMS and other volunteer services. We see a lack of participation for people involved at the school, for volunteers at the school, people that want to step up to do the jobs that you're doing as school board members. We see that at the churches. We see that in all sorts of different areas. So I don't think that the this tax credit is going to be the bargaining chip that brings people into the community to participate in these emergency services. I do think there's a significant problem there, and if funds are needed to help offset the EMS workers and volunteers, I think it probably makes more sense for the towns than the schools to look at that, or also in our own private capacities if some kind of compensation is needed or to cover training, et cetera. I think some of the requirements are somewhat over the top that they need to go through. I feel like that should be dealt with privately. So just wanted to give that quick thought as another member of the community. So thank you, appreciate it.
Thank you. Is there anyone else that would like to speak? Daphne, do we have any emails?
We do not.
Okay. I'm going to move us on to the senior citizen tax exemption and persons with disabilities and limited income tax exemption. For the public hearing, correct. Public hearing is necessary due to the increase in income limits for the 2024 approved by Greene County on December 20th, 2023. Senior citizens living in the Greenville Central School District who are 65 years old or over will be eligible for these reductions in school taxes if their income level is $43,499.99 or lower. District residents with a disability whose income is limited by such disability will be eligible for these reductions in school taxes if their income level is $43,499.99 or lower. This is a sliding scale based on maximum income limits that are detailed, I believe, in the document for there. Anything else that I need to do?
No.
All right, then I'm going to move us on to presentation and discussion.
Anybody want to speak?
Oh, if anyone would like, sorry, okay, if anyone would like to speak during this public hearing. Do we have any emails related to it? I'm not sure you're allowed to.
We do not.
Okay, there we go. All right, thank you, Daphne. I will now move us on to presentation and discussion. The first one is I'd like to ask Denise Wickham to come up and provide an update on football.
Hi, everyone. So I was asked to do a presentation on whether we think football should be here at Greenville. So there's really two options to that. One, Greenville can start their own team, and two, we have a possible merger situation. As you recall, I was up here doing this, I think, before COVID, and we were talking about getting into a three-way merger between Carroll, Catskill, and Greenville. Okay? So you ask, are our students interested in football? And yes, they are. Okay, so in the short amount of time, I put out a survey last week. We had 76 responses from students, and you can see the breakdown up there. You know, and what that tells you is, you know, could we start at the modified level? You know, right now in the Patroon Conference, we only have modified and varsity football. We don't have a JV level for most of our programs. So you could start it at a modified level, and you know, there seems to be quite a bit of interest at the lower levels. And then this one is said is if you're interested in playing football, do you currently play another fall sport? And you can see, you know, boys soccer, 22 responses. You know, and we have girls soccer up there too. Girls can play football as well. So those are all the numbers that we got. We had 19 students that responded that don't play any fall sport whatsoever. And would you play football instead of playing the fall sport you currently play? 46 of them said yes, 9 said no, and 21 of them were maybes. This kind of just speaks to that, what would the impact be on our other sports programs here at Greenville? Should we, get into a merger, or should we do a team on our own? So what are the costs of running a football program? So first of all, you have uniform program costs. Usually varsity uniforms, modified uniforms, and then there's practice uniforms, jerseys, and practice pants. Those range in different prices. Socks, and your safety equipment. This is where you really get the largest cost for football. Is the helmet can be anywhere between $300 and $500 depending. Shoulder pads, girdles, which include your thigh, your hip, your tailbone, and your knee pads, mouth guards, and belt. And all of this equipment needs to be reconditioned every single summer. So then you have reconditioning costs on there, which are your helmets mostly. Those are required to be reconditioned. And your pads, which will keep them in better shape, can be reconditioned as well. And helmets actually have a 10-year lifespan.
Is that per set, or is that total for like an entire program?
That would be for a program. Yep. So helmets have to be, they have a 10-year life cycle. So, one of the biggest items that you're going to be purchasing on a year-to-year basis and trying to get onto some kind of replacement schedule would be for those helmets. So if you buy them all at one time, then you're going to be replacing them all at one time. So you try to kind of do that in increments. Yes, go ahead.
And that reconditioning cost, that's an annual cost?
That's an annual cost.
Thank you.
Because and that's a program for modified and for varsity. Uniform program costs, we went backwards. Transportation costs. So I asked Mary, and she was wonderful and put together some, prices and so forth. I said, okay, so it's an 8-week season, and with postseason it can be a 10-week season. If you merge with another district, say we were looking at merging with Coxsackie, your 8 weeks would be $13,600 for transportation, and 10 weeks is $16,000 roughly. Officials costs, you're going to have those as well. I put the breakdown up there. You can look at that. Like usually on a varsity game, they're going to have 5 officials. On a varsity game, on a modified, they're going to have 3 officials, and you can see the costs there. Generally, I would say that you probably budget around $4,500 for officials for a season. That way, if you get into the playoffs and you end up having to pay for postseason play games, then that's a pretty good estimate, and it keeps you covered. Coaching stipends, I don't have these for you guys because they would have to be negotiated. If you did your own program, this is normally what would happen. You would have a varsity head coach and 2 assistants, and then you would have a modified coach and usually 1 assistant for modified. Even if you merge a program, you would have to hire a coach, somebody that's going to be with those kids as they are transported back and forth from another school. So in that situation, that would be something that you would have to work out with the other school district. And for us to have that person in our own district. Other associated costs, there's an insurance rider that usually a school district will have for football. Athletic trainers, at every single home game you're required to have an athletic trainer, a doctor, or an ambulance at every one of the home games. A lot of the volunteer ambulance departments will actually cover those for free. Sometimes you do have to pay for that service. But also, if they're covering it for free, they could be called out. Right now, we do not at Greenville have a trainer. So you'd have to have either a doctor or somebody there that would have to be able to cover in that instance. If you did a program on your own, if Greenville said, hey, we're in, right? And you wanted to upgrade our facilities, which we kind of just did, the biggest thing would be goalposts, installation, and so forth. And each goalpost can cost you between $11,000 and $17,000. And then you got your basic supplies. And these are just ones that I'm thinking of off the top of my head, you know, from other programs that I've been involved with. But that would be a great deal of cost for us to do that on our own. So I had been in conversation with Cooksaki Athens, the athletic director there. The merger deadline for this, for football, is February 1st. So if this is something that, you know, Greenville is considering, the board is considering, then we need to make a decision soon. You know, you can apply for a merger, and then at the last minute you can say, no, we're not going to merge. But if you don't do that, that's a firm deadline. They will not allow you in afterwards, just so that you guys know that. So merger with Cooksaki. These are some of the prices that he gave me for their budget. And I'm not going to read down through all of those. It's, you know, all those normal things like uniforms. You see that $5,500 up there, that's just for varsity uniforms. So then you have to have modified and you have to have practice uniforms. But it goes down through all of the travel, things that I just kind of talked about. So in essence, it's around $49,000. And what they were recommending is that we divide that in half. So it would be $24,750 for a merger. And that's plus transportation and coaching stipends. So 8 weeks would be $38,350, 10 weeks, $40,000. And that does not include the coaching stipends for us to hire one and negotiate that with the union. Considerations, things that you need to think about with football. So transportation, we all know that we've been having our own issues with transportation, and we're working really hard at getting drivers. So would Greenville send a bus to the other district on game days to ride with the other team, or would we be sending our kids on our own bus to wherever that site was? Okay. How would our students be transported back to Greenville if we sent them over to Cooksaki? How would we get them back? And how would that whole thing work? Would parents transport their child to practices and games? Or would we give them that option? Right now we don't have that option for parents. And also, would student drivers be able to drive over to Cooksaki? So these are all things to think about should we do that. Would the district be able to transport daily? So this would be a 6-day-a-week, every day after school, transporting kids over to Cooksaki or to another district. And we've been having some issues with, do we have the drivers to do that? And how does that impact what we currently have, right? Yes, go ahead, Eric.
You're mentioning during the school, when it's normally open, what would we do with August when they practice before school?
Generally for transportation, are you talking about?
Yeah.
Generally for transportation, when we're not during school, we have better luck.
Okay. But we would still have to do it?
Yes, you'd still have to do it. I doubt very much, and I know that there are sometimes mergers in districts that one district they'll run a practice here, right? And then they come together like 2 or 3 times a week. But with football, I can't see that working very well because it's a team sport. If it was an individual sport like cross country, yeah, you could do that. And there could be a possibility of maybe they come here for practice. And then, do we have a practice facility for football? Would be another question that I just came into my mind. Go ahead.
Thanks. On an earlier slide, you showed an estimate of transportation costs being around $13,600 to $16,200.
Yeah.
But with all the questions you had on the later slide, it seems that depending on what the answers to those questions are, the cost could be higher.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, that's an estimate.
Sure.
And with football, I mean, the numbers are declining in football, so you have to travel a little bit further right now for games because they can be spread out all over. because it's a classification sport, and that means basically we're gonna play against these. If we merge with Cooksaki, we may be a B, we may be an A, depending on how the calculations come out. And then you play like schools in classification. So that could increase your travel. You just don't know how much that's gonna be. Other things to consider, how many coaches would Greenville hire? You know, how will tryouts be conducted? How many students would be allowed to participate? What time will practices run, right? So all of these things, you know, normally you get out of school and you go right to practice, but that might not be the case with us. And then you also need to consider what levels, right? Do you want to start this at a potentially a modified level and bring kids up and through it? Or would you offer a varsity and a modified merger? So those are all things to consider with football. Do the kids want it? Yes. There's a whole group of them that would be very, very excited to have the possibility.
Sorry, one more question. The insurance rider you mentioned, you didn't provide an estimate. Do you have an idea of what that might cost? Or Mike, do you? Or Todd?
I did ask, and I think that Mike and Todd were looking into it.
Yes, we're currently waiting for, to get an estimate back from our insurance companies.
Denise, I know that's a survey of interest among the kids. That's not saying, like, has there been any survey of those parents? I mean, my kids will tell you they want to do a lot of things, but do we have any real estimate?
You know, it's one of those things, because in Greenville, we've never had a football program. So there, you know, kids see football and they're like, yeah, I want to play it. It's a very difficult sport. And, you know, so, you know, what would the retention be? I have no idea. Like, as far as them getting into it and being involved and then staying with it over the years. I don't know what that would look like. No, to your point, is we have not, you know, surveyed any of the parents.
And a question,
Jim, hold on, just get the microphone for the recording, thanks.
you had talked about mergers with Cooksaki and possibly Catskill. Is the interest levels kind of in the same percentages with those schools as well? You know, with having football as a merger, or just to participate in those levels?
Well, when we did this originally with Catskill and Caro, you know, I had like 45 kids that were interested. This time around, like I said, we've gotten 76 responses within a week of their interest. I don't know if that answered your question or not.
Yeah, I just wanted to make sure that it was across the other two schools, not just Greenville.
Yeah. So, you know, Cooksaki would be happy to have us in a merger. And one of the other things with merging that would be kind of nice is you could look to have multiple levels. Right now, like I said, we have varsity and modified football in our conference, but when you have more kids involved, you can get all three levels, which is obviously better for your program in the long run.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Now I have two questions.
Okay. One first.
So let's say we do merge with Cooksaki Athens, and you know, obviously they have a classification already because this is this is part of their athletics program. So sorry, I'm just trying to think of my question here. How many neighboring schools would? All right, so forget about the Cooksaki question. If we have our own team, and let's say we're a Class A, how many neighboring schools would we be competing against?
Well, right now we're Class B classification.
Oh, okay.
Our school district is in most sports.
Okay.
There are some nuances in there, but we're Class B, and our conference is predominantly B.
Okay.
So there are neighboring schools, if I'm catching your question right. We have a lot of neighboring schools that are Class B.
Okay.
So that would limit travel.
Okay. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Any other questions for Denise? All right, thank you for all that
Thank you,
information.
Denise.
Thank you so much. Appreciate it. I think as with anything, it's a matter of prioritizing where the things fall. I'd like to see a swimming pool, but that's a discussion with David to see. He's ready to kill me. All right. Now I'd like to move
Tracy,
this. Yes.
sorry, before moving on, just Tracy or Mike, could you have Denise's presentation added to the board docs? Public. Thank you.
I think that's a good point, Jay. So if anyone watching it later on would like to see some of the numbers that were presented, just go into board docs and they'll be linked in there. Thank you. All right, now I am going to turn us over to Todd Hilgendorf, the Assistant Superintendent of Business, who is going to take us through the rollover budget or the budget review.
Thanks, Tracy. Good evening, everybody. So before we get started with the rollover budget presentation, just touching base on the documents. So the board received a handout that says 24-25 rollover budget discussion. And then there's also the slide deck that I'm going to be going through. These are both posted on board docs on the website and will also be updated tomorrow morning on the budget site of the website as well. So just in terms of what we're looking at tonight are those couple of documents. Also want to reference the budget handbook that we looked at last month. That's a good resource to look at throughout the budget cycle because there's a lot of good information in there for the board members, but also for the public if they want to learn more about the budgeting process. So with that said, we're going to start with some similar slides that you saw in December when we talked about the budget process as we kicked off that budget process. The first one being this slide that shows our district mission as well as our district vision and goals. So we incorporate this because we want to make sure as we talk about budget, and there's a lot of numbers that go along with budgeting, we want to make sure that this is all grounded in what we are working on as a district. We're working towards that mission statement. We're working and focusing on those goals that we've identified through our school improvement processes. So it's important to use this slide as the starting point of all our budget conversations just to ground us and remind us what we're working towards. Another slide that should look familiar is our budget timeline. This shows by month the different events that are happening in the budget development process. So we are here tonight to review the rollover budget that we've worked on for the past 2 months. And at the same time, if you go down the month of January, you see a lot of different events happening during the month of January. I'm not going to touch on all of them, but just want to highlight that we really do have a collaborative process for budget development here at Greenville. So this incorporates ideas, feedback, and requests from all areas of our district. So what does that mean? In addition to the rollover budget being worked on over the past month and throughout January, information that was submitted from team leaders and department chairs is then reviewed by principals and compiled into building level requests. Mr. Bennett and I have also started our meetings, so we cycle through and meet with each of the administrators to review the budget requests that come from those areas, and that includes everything from staffing requests, supplies, textbooks, and equipment. I've also met with the supervisors to review their budgets in transportation, buildings and grounds, and food service. And all of these requests, I'm mentioning them here tonight, but you'll actually see the details of all those pieces in later budget presentations really into February and March. So again, tonight, January meeting, we're really focusing on the rollover budget. Again, before we get into the rollover budget, this slide also pulling in from last month. So there are really some major decision points. If we think about all of the pieces that go into budget development, there are really key areas that we really have those decisions. So this kind of breaks into 3 main areas. So starting on the left, in the maroon, one decision point is the consideration and management of our current programming and staffing. And you're going to hear a little bit about that tonight with the rollover. This starts with the rollover budget, and then we continue to refine those decisions between now and April when we have a proposed budget. The second big decision point is on the right-hand side in the light gray, and that is the tax levy, which is the increase that is allowable and sustainable for the Greenville School District. The decisions that will occur for this area really happen during the month of March and April as we set the tax cap and identify what that tax levy increase will be. And the kind of the last third main area of decision point is how we utilize our fund balances and reserves, and that's on the bottom in that dark gray color. So budget construction. This evening, as I mentioned several times already, we are all the way over on the left with the rollover budget. This is really the starting place for our budget. So this is a formula that we start on the left, and we either have plus or minuses as we work our way from now, really up until April when we get to the true proposed budget, which is what's put up for voters to determine. The rollover budget is used as a starting point for the new budget of the 24-25 school year. The rollover budget is put together based on assumptions that all current staffing and programs will stay exactly as they are. That's an important thing to just highlight. We make the assumption that current programming and current staffing is staying as is, and we are rolling over those costs. So for the 24-25 rollover budget, we have included the current positions that are funded through stimulus funds into the general fund. So when we talk about staffing and benefits later on this evening, important to note that that includes some positions that currently have been in stimulus funds, pulling them over into the rollover budget in the general fund. For the rollover budget, we then look at the current year budget, so the 23-24, and we increase expenditures that we know will increase every year. So for example, salaries and related costs for employment contracts, we know those projected expenses from the contracts that we have. We also know that our BOCES contracts will increase, health insurance, general insurance, retirements rates. Those are all areas that we know we will have increases. When we have actual costs, we use them, but in many areas this early on in the budget cycle, we are making assumptions and predictions. So for the purpose of the rollover budget this evening, the salaries we utilize are actual contracts, so that's much more of a known. We have contracts that tell us what the salaries and benefits will be for the 24-25 school year. For employee benefits, Social Security and Medicare, we use a 7.65% rate. For ERS and TRS, so Employee Retirement System and Teacher Retirement System, we utilize preliminary rates that have been estimated by each of those retirement systems. The more fixed rates don't come out until within the next couple of months. For health insurance costs, we have estimated an increase of 10%, and this also will be revised to actual costs if we know them, hopefully sometime in March. For BOCES, our Questar costs, we have an increased estimate of 3% across the board. Again, when we have those more fixed numbers, we update that later on in the process. And then lastly, for debt service, we have actual amounts for some of our current debt, and we also have estimated bonds that will be occurring next year for a bus purchase that we've estimated what those costs will be. So all of that information feeds into what we call the rollover budget. Before we get into the numbers for the 24-25 rollover budget, I wanted to share some data from the past 2 years of budget development. So for the 22-23 school year budget, this is going back 2 years, there was an increase of $811,275, or a 2.47% increase over the previous year. So this is, for that school year, we increased the budget 2.47%. This resulted in a $390,577 increase to the tax levy, which are the taxes that we are collecting from the local school community. And that's a 2.25% increase over the previous year. So just highlighting some numbers here, when we developed the 22-23 school year budget, these were the increases in dollar amounts as well as percentage. If we look at this current school year budget, the 23-24, there was an increase of $530,329, or 1.57% increase over the previous year. So if we look at this current year's budget and compared it to last year's budget, the expenditures, that was a 1.5% increase to this current year. This resulted in a $438,414 increase in the tax levy, again, meaning the taxes that we were collecting from the school community, which was a 2.47% increase over the previous year. So from last year's tax levy, the amount we collected from taxpayers last school year, to this school year, there was an increase of 2.47.
Todd? Yeah. Before we move on, I think it would be helpful, just for everyone's understanding, if you could explain what accounts for the difference between the increase in budget versus the increase in tax levy.
So the increase in budget So if you look at the 23-24 budget, $34 million, I'm just gonna use some round numbers for discussion purposes. $34 million is the total amount of expenditures that over the course of the 23-24 school year, the district has those expenditures. We are paying out that money. In order to pay out those expenditures, or to pay for everything we do as a district, we take in revenue from a variety of different sources. One of the main sources is the tax levy, the amount of money that we collect from taxpayers. So on the bottom there, that is specifically showing the tax levy for this current year was $18 million. So we collected $18 million from taxpayers. From 18 to 34, well, obviously we had revenues in other areas. The majority of that is made up from state aid. So the difference here is the top numbers are everything that we are spending out over the course of the year. The bottom number is the portion of those spendings that we are paying for by the revenue we pull in from taxpayers. How'd I do? Does that help?
Yeah, very good. Or, I mean, just, so there's the budget, and you subtract out state aid and subtract out other revenues, and what's left is the levy.
Correct, that's another way of thinking about it. Of the other revenues that we have, such as state aid, if we pull those out, we are responsible at the local level currently this year for $18 million. Another way of thinking about it, yeah. Good question, thank you. And then one last look back slide. This is, if we went back and looked at this exact meeting last January, so January of 2023, projecting forward to this current school year, what did we say at this time last year the rollover budget would be for this current school year? So this showed that at this time last year, we were at a $1,075,326 increase, or a 3.19. So now, just keep that number in mind. If I go back, we actually ended up at only 531.57. So I'm showing this just to show the rollover budget tends to be a larger number because we're making a lot of assumptions. There are a lot of unknowns at this point in the process. We are looking at this number compared to last year. We're kind of similar when we get to the rollover for this year. All right, so for the 24-25 school year, as I said before, if we took the areas of our budget that we know will increase, our estimated budget would be $35,388,991, an increase of $1,161,220, or a 3.39% increase. Again, important to note that this increase amount will continue to change and be updated as we learn more information about our projected expenditures and the revenues over the next couple of months. But this is the starting point for our budget process. The rollover is showing a 3.39% increase from the current year's budget to next year. So breaking this down, we're going to do this two different ways, kind of breaking the budget down into different categories to look at it and hopefully better understand where or what makes up the budget. So in New York State, we are required to present a three-part budget where all districts across the state organize expenses into three different categories. Those categories are administrative, capital, and program. So there's a detailed description of the three-part budget in tonight's handout, as well as the budget handbook that I mentioned earlier from last month. So by law, districts must divide their budgets into these three categories. Again, administrative, capital, and program. And we must show how each component has increased compared to the total budget. So up on the slide here is the administrative component of the 24-25 rollover budget. The administrative component includes, I'm not going to give an exhaustive list, but just so you have an idea of what is included in each of these areas. The administrative includes things such as salaries and benefits of certified staff who spend at least 50% of their time in administration, as well as the clerical staff that supports them. Some other costs in this area are school board costs, tax collection, legal and auditing services, and administrative costs through BOCES. All these numbers total up on the bottom. So at the bottom here, there is a $128,324 increase in this component, which is a 3.64% increase over the current year. So again, this is the first component, which is the administrative. On this slide, we have the other two components, capital and program. So capital includes salaries and benefits of maintenance and custodial staff, debt service, bus purchases, facility costs, maintenance, repairs, and small construction projects. For the rollover budget, there is a $43,755 increase in the capital component, which is a 0.89% increase. And lastly, the program component includes salaries and benefits of all teachers and staff delivering pupil services, so everybody that's working directly with students, instructional materials, equipment, and BOCES programming and transportation costs, except for bus purchases. So for the rollover budget, the program costs, there's an increase of $989,141, which is an increase of 3.83%. Taking the rollover budget in these three components and putting them in a pie chart, we see the breakdown by percent. So the administrative component makes up 10.3% of the budget, which on this slide, I know it's a little hard to see, but that's the orange slice of the pie. The capital component makes up 13.9% of the total budget, which is the blue color on the screen. And lastly, the program makes up the majority, which is 75.7% of the total budget, which on this slide is seen in the purple. So that was the three-part component. That's what we're required by New York State to break our expenses into those three categories and look at it from one budget to the next. Different way of looking at the budget, which might be a little bit more useful or easier to understand. This is expenditures at a glance. So the same rollover budget, but just breaking it down into slightly different categories that might be a little easier to look at. So a different way of looking at the budget is broken into categories seen here. You'll notice here that the two areas of increase with the largest numbers are salaries and benefits and BOCES. So as mentioned earlier, salaries are known as we use current contract agreements to project what the actual 24 and 25 costs would be. Also in there is the assumption of healthcare costs that could potentially come down. We estimate at 10% the benefits there could come down to a lower cost. It's important to note that the salary line here includes positions, as I noted earlier, that were previously paid for through stimulus funds. And then the other area that there's a large increase here that you might notice, the BOCES increase is a 3% estimated increase across all codes. So for the initial rollover, we just take the BOCES codes that we have this current year and add 3% with the assumption that those costs will go up 3%. In addition, this year, there are some increases for services that we are currently participating in during this year that we increased during the 23-24 budget that makes that number higher than just the 3%. So in this view, it's just a different way of looking at the budget, breaking down salary and benefits versus contractual versus BOCES versus really debt service. So when you put the same information on a pie chart, you get this one. This shows the salaries and benefits that make up the largest percentage of our budget, which is in the blue here, 75%. And again, the majority of that is locked into current contracts. We know those expenses as we roll over. And then these other areas that make up smaller pieces of the pie.
Todd, could you go back one slide?
Yep.
I think this is a helpful view, but for the salaries and benefits, of the little over $1 million, how much of that in terms of dollars is comprised of the positions that are being rolled in from stimulus funds that previously were supported by stimulus funds?
I don't have that off the top of my head, but I can get it.
Thank you.
I have another question. Could you please explain what BOCES service is? Like, give an example of what that is.
Absolutely. So here, BOCES services, this includes everything that we purchase through BOCES. This could be our students that go to CTE programs at BOCES, so a student that goes to the welding program, that cost is included in there. But there's also services, we purchase some of our software. So when we talk about iReady, we use iReady or elementary middle school. iReady we were able to purchase through Questar, so that goes on the BOCES code because we get aid back on those expenditures. That's just a couple of examples. So there's a wide variety of items that go into that BOCES code.
Okay, so when you give us that number though, that's not discounting for aid or anything, that's just what we're gonna put out, and then there's going to be some kickback there.
Correct.
Those
So
numbers are not, they're not a finalized out-of-pocket number for us.
correct.
Okay.
One, it's not finalized because we don't know the true increase, because
Right.
those come from BOCES. Hopefully,
Right.
hopefully within the next couple of weeks, we'll have firmer numbers in some of these areas. But it's also the aid that we get back never shows up here. It shows up on the revenue side of expense-driven aid. So
I told you I
as
was
we
gonna
pay
make it
out,
crazy.
no, these are good questions. As we pay it out, it's the following year that we get aid back. So what we are currently paying this year in BOCES through BOCES services, whatever we pay this year, there are certain percentages that we'll see next year, 24, 25, on the revenue side.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Todd, one quick follow-up on the question about the positions asked. I also don't remember what the positions are that are being rolled in from the stimulus, previously supported by the stimulus funds. I don't know if you have that now, but if you could provide those titles with the numbers when you have it.
Absolutely, yes. So that is the rollover budget. Looking at our current budget and rolling over the expenses that we know will increase to next year, brings us back to our budget timeline. We will be back for a budget presentation on February 26th. That is a very in-depth presentation. It's the program component. So tonight when I spoke about those three components, everything that has to do with the program component of the budget will be presented on February 26th. That will be looking at those proposals and areas of increase or changes that were mentioned before from team leaders, department chairs, through principals, through the administrative team, up to Mr. Bennett and I, and looking at what our current program and staffing are in the program component and what we're proposing for next year. So that will be the next step in our process. We'll be back February 26th.
Thank you, Todd. That was very helpful, I think, in the way that you laid it out and also kind of explaining it, differences between some of the expenses, how we use the rollover as a starting point, and we use it conservatively. So we estimate high so that it goes down, because that is a good thing. I think that we would be very upset if we estimate low and then all of a sudden it goes the other way. So thank you very much for that. Any other questions related to the budget before we move on?
I only have one question, Tracy, because Jake thoroughly answered or asked one question. Todd, does the rollover budget include any cost of positions that were not filled for this school year?
Wait, say it again.
If we had a position that was budgeted for this year and that position didn't get filled, we didn't hire someone, does this rollover budget include that dollar amount?
It does, yes. Correct.
Okay, and as you go ahead.
Sorry, just follow up on that. If maybe at the next meetings, I assume you don't have the information now, you could let us know how many positions and how much money that is?
Yes.
You know, I assume if it's going, I guess we'll wait to hear what the actual recommendation is for the program to go forward. But I think it would be helpful to know how much that is potentially being carried forward.
Absolutely. And that all connects to your prior question about the stimulus positions. It's all intertwined. So yes, we can put that all together.
To go along with that, Jay, also, Todd, when we look at positions, a lot of the documentations we've seen, or I've read and interpreted, that when we are talking about positions, we're only talking about whether or not we're going to add to or subtract educational positions. And at some point, we need to know when other positions are looked at from a budgetary lens from their supervisors.
In terms of an increase?
Either one.
Yeah. So that would all be through the budget process I mentioned earlier. I had meetings with each of the supervisors. It's all part of that process if there's requests for a change in staffing.
So then just to clarify, that would be discussed more in the Well, not necessarily the program, because you could have the administrative and revenue, correct? You know, it would be discussed in the appropriate bucket.
Correct. So like, the program component includes transportation, so that could be, if there was a request there, it would be within that budget presentation on the 26th.
Okay.
Correct.
Any other questions? Okay, then I'm going to move us on to the property tax exemption for volunteer firefighters and volunteer ambulance workers. Todd, take it away.
This is going to really turn back to the board, but I'll give an update. So the meeting in December, there was conversation on this topic. I did reach out to our school attorney to get some very defined information in terms of what we are able to do and what decisions need to be made if the board chooses to move forward with the action items. So the board was hopefully has the information that was shared back from our school attorneys.
Todd, if I could interrupt,
Yep.
I did email everyone with these questions separately just to make sure that it was top of mind.
Okay. So what it comes down to, what the district has the ability to determine in a resolution, I'm just going to read through the list. One is to define what an enrolled member is, and there's actual language recommended of what that could mean. Two, define what an authority having jurisdiction is, and again, there's reference from our attorney of what the language could potentially be. The next two are really what the heart of the conversation was last month, and I think the board will need to continue that conversation tonight. Make a determination as to the percentage, up to 10% exemption is permitted. And number four, make a determination as to the minimum number of years service, 2 to 5, required to get the exemption. The last two, decide where applications for exemptions would be filed. They would be filed with the assessor's office, and decide when the exemption takes effect. The idea would be it would be taking effect for the 24-25 school year.
So do we want to take it one at a time? All right, if anyone, I'd encourage all of us to use this memo that we have. So for enrolled member, I'll read what it says. Let's see, for the purposes of the exemption granted to volunteer firefighters, the term enrolled member of an incorporated volunteer fire company or volunteer fire department shall mean an active volunteer firefighter as defined in New York State General Municipal Law 215, and based upon criteria established by the authority having jurisdiction. And then, for the purposes of exemption granted to volunteer ambulance workers, the term enrolled member of an incorporated volunteer ambulance service shall mean an active volunteer ambulance worker based upon criteria established by the authority having jurisdiction. All legalese, basically saying it's New York State General Municipal Law 215. So my recommendation would be to follow that wording very closely for that, unless anyone has any thoughts on words that would be included or otherwise. So that's the first question.
I agree with that. Good following. Okay. I'm sharing with Jim.
Do we want to take the extra microphone that's over there to the podium? Not that we don't believe, no, not that one, just because for the closing open forum, people might want to say something. Thank you, Angela. All right, fingers crossed that they work. Jay, do you want to say something? Jim does, okay. All right, flip a coin. Who wants to go first?
Not to take too much time, but I want to thank Todd for almost immediately providing us data at the end of our last meeting. If you guys remember, he emailed us information that I'm looking at that other districts have done, and that might help you with your mental discussion.
So I'm going to kind of take it one at a time and just kind of keep us in order. So Jim or Jay, did you have anything related to the definition of enrolled member?
I will say,
I'm fine with the definition as read with New York State municipal law and keeping simple with that.
And I agree with the three of you.
Okay. All right, so anyone else differ, or we're all in agreement? Circle one. Define what an authority having jurisdiction is. For that purpose, I'll read what it said. For the purpose of this resolution, authority having jurisdiction to certify enrolled members shall mean the Incorporated Volunteer Fire Company, Volunteer Fire Department, or Incorporated Volunteer Ambulance Service, which serves the school district and in which the applicant serves. Now do we know how many volunteer fire departments actually for Greenville? Because we have 11 towns, so.
I think the wording on that needs to be, that's the part I have an issue with. It's not serving the school district, it serves the area that's also served by the school district. So it's within the confines of Greenville School District.
Okay.
Serving an area within those confines. Does that make sense? It's not serving
It
us
does.
specifically.
Thoughts?
That's a good point. Kelly, if it's just changed to, not to say elegant, but which serves within the school district?
I'm not sure exactly what the wording needs to be, except the way it reads right now is that it's saying it's serving us, like the school. Like, I just feel like it needs to specify more the area that is identified as part of our school district. Does that make sense? I don't know what the words need to be on that.
I understand, it makes sense. I just think-
Within the Greenville Central School District, it's like within, because we have a circle of a line, so it is those that are within that
Within the boundaries
area.
of the Greenville Central
I'm not a
School
lawyer,
District?
so.
I understand. Can give it some thought on the fly, but in the interest of trying to wrap this up tonight, whether or not leave open issues like that, especially if there's, I think should be a fairly straightforward tweak to the language to address your point.
Jay, if you look at that language, to go along with what Kelly suggested, just insert within after, and is this document on board docs at all? I mean, is it possible that our audience is looking at this as well? Or they can't see it at all?
But we can.
Like, that's my suggestion, is that in order to make sure that we say, well, it said what we wanted to say, the fire district needs to be within the school district, and the school district's boundaries are defined.
Within would work for me. I think that's a very simple. Kelly, would that address
It's
your?
on here that way.
Which serves, no.
Oh, it's on the sample resolution.
On the sample resolution, under number 1,
All right,
it
hold on.
says within the school district.
There you go.
I'm sorry, I was looking at the memo, which doesn't have.
Right. Looking at the memo.
Oh, that's what I thought
I
you
didn't
were
want to
referring
use
to.
the memo language because it wasn't right. So
Right,
this
that's what I thought you were
sample
referring
works
to.
better.
Okay.
Good catch, thank you, John.
All right, where exactly is it, Kelly? So I don't have to read the whole document. The primary residential.
Third line, third word from the right
Thank you.
side.
Within, thank you, okay. All right, let's see, so, are we okay with defining as is? Okay. All right, make a determination as to the percentage, up to 10% exemption permitted. And there was a document showing what other school districts and areas have provided. So, thoughts?
my recommendation is 10%.
I second his recommendation.
Yes, 10%.
Is everyone in agreement, or does anyone have a different percentage?
Well, we're only allowed to go up to 10%.
Correct. You could go below that.
No, I'm not going below that.
Okay, all right, that's it. Just want to throw it out there. So,
I'm not suggesting lower percentage, but I have a question. Todd, do you know whatever percentage we approve, we get through a year or two of providing it? I don't remember how well you'll be able to quantify what the cost will be.
So not necessarily cost.
The shift.
It's a redistribution, a shift, right? So there's no
That's what I meant.
cost necessarily, but just clarifying. So yes, just like that report, that Daphne was great last time she found it in last year's budget newsletter or budget.
The budget workbook.
Budget workbook, thank you. It breaks down all the current exemptions and the amounts of every single one. So we will be able to see this a year from now in that way, if adopted.
Second question, which really is a question for all the exemptions. I think we've granted a few, right? Or we've granted a couple, considering a third. Do you know, is it possible to reconsider the percentage in the future? Or is this a one and done?
I don't know the answer to that. I think, but I don't know. I think technically the board could take action on changing it because you're approving a resolution. You could then update and change it, but I don't know that. I would have to check.
That makes sense to me. That's what I thought, but I hate to make assumptions like that.
Says differently,
Right.
yeah.
but it's, like, for example, with the senior citizens, and it's every time the income level changes, that's when it needs to go up. But for example, as with the veterans, then that was provided and does not need to be renewed. So that's kind of the slight difference, if that answers your question.
If I'm correct, I think the veterans, you're correct, doesn't need to be renewed. However, the terms and percentages can be adjusted if a new resolution were to come up in the future. So it's not solidified in stone as is. That's my understanding.
That sounds correct. I would agree with that. Okay.
And that's really the question. I mean, taking a step back from the information that we've had both from Todd and just all the information that's come in, I think that, I don't think that this is going to have a real significant impact in terms of what that redistribution is. My concern is more in the future circumstances can change, but also the state is likely at some point to approve another one of these unfunded benefits that we'll be asked to consider. And I don't think that anything we've done up till now, whether we approve this or not, and whether we've approved others or not, bind us in the future. So the next one that comes down the pike, I don't think we should feel obligated to approve because we've done it before. And the more that we add to this, the more of these exemptions that are approved, the more of the cumulative impact, the more likely it is to actually have more of a material effect on the other taxpayers. There's a long way of saying that Jim was getting at what I was asking about. If circumstances were to change in the future, if we were to realize that this cost shift, say from a couple of the exemptions we've approved, are having more of an impact than we think is reasonable, we could revisit it then. But as of now, based on all the information that I've seen, I think 10% is reasonable. It's a long way of explaining why I agree with the proposal from everyone else.
Okay.
Tracy, if I may, on the veterans exemption, and I did send you a copy of it, we could have a section 3 from the veterans said, this resolution shall take effect for
the upcoming school tax year and be in effect for subsequent school tax years in accordance with the law and regulation until rescinded or amended by resolution of the Board of Education. We could probably add something like that to this resolution.
All right. And kind of, Jay, going along with what you were saying, Todd had provided a presentation that I think that was linked last month, and it says the tax shift, just to try to quantify, and again, this is for Greene County, but the tax shift would be $6.77 for each $100,000 of full market value, or on average residents with a value of $253,000, a shift of approximately $17 to non-firefighters. Again, this does not include villages at $6. So just to help quantify, and again, it's a starting point. We would have to wait, assess the projections and everything else, and Greenville also has Albany as well as Greene County. But in looking at it, we are talking a number that for every $100,000 then is small, is what I will say. So I just wanted to put that number out there because I think there were some comments about that was this being rushed through, had we looked at the numbers, and I can say just personally, I have looked at some numbers to help quantify, to understand the impact that we are asking, or that I am asking other individuals to pick up. And so so yes, we do have some numbers. They're not 100%, but it's a starting point. And I think then, Jake, to your point, then we go through and look at it, validate some of the assumptions that we're in, and we'll have more numbers. So to summarize everything so far, on the 10%, are people in agreement at the 10%? I'm saying yes.
I'm still yes. I'm going to be yes all night long.
Okay. All right, so then we are at 10%. Number 4, make a determination as to the minimum number of years of service. It's between 2 and 5. And looking at school districts, what we are seeing is some districts are 2, some districts are 3 years of service. Where do we want to net out?
I learned from tonight and our coffee and chat that they do have a probationary period. It could be 6 months, it could be 12 months. So if you say 2 years, 3 years, add another year that they've spent certifying or training or whatever to get to this position. So just keep that in mind.
So just to clarify, then 2 years really means 1 additional year because it's probationary and is not included in the 2 years of service. Okay. Thoughts?
Angela, is that uniform among all? It's not.
I don't think so, but there's probably people who can answer.
Yeah.
Please clarify. I will welcome a comment from the
Just
public.
so you know, the town of Greenville has left it up to the fire district to set the regulation for the year's service. The resolution that the fire district passed was you must have so much participation during the year, a percentage, and you must be an active member for 5 years before you get this credit.
They went high.
That way, we know the people are going to stay, hopefully, with the departments. Usually, we see that they'll wash out within 2 or 3 years. So, yeah. The Greenville Fire District itself would set a 5-year. You have to be an active member for 5 years before the district will approve your being given the exemption.
But that doesn't mean we have to say 5 years. We don't have to say 5 years though,
No,
correct? That's
but
just
that's
for
what
your district.
Fire district itself said that we wanted to do.
Okay. My initial thought with the extra probation that some departments require would be to go with 3.
I will share that I was thinking 3 to begin it. It was before I was aware of the year, but I think that I'm still going to stay at 3. There are other schools that are at 3. Kind of a little bit for what the comment was just made for that. Where do other people net out?
I guess to listen to Cliff, within their ranks on who's qualified, who they feel is not going to be a washout, that kind of thing. I kind of like a stipulation of agreeing with their guidelines. However, that resolution could change, so make sure we don't go below a minimum, but agree with what, let them set the standard, but for us not to go below, like if you're saying 3 years, if they agree to 5, whichever one that they agree, go with the higher amount, or, you know, does that make sense? Like Cliff, you're saying 5 years. If we say 3, however, Greenville says 5, and that's what gives them access, their resolution can change. So if we agree to go with theirs, and then just don't have it below the minimum that we would like. You know, you're saying 3 years. I agree that enables the fire district themselves to set the, how do I say, the signature of who they feel is going to be a concrete, you know, not washout type representative.
I do like that. So then it's kind of working together, and I'm not a lawyer, I need for the wording for the resolution, you know, it is the greater of the 2. Greenville says 3 years, or based on what the individual fire department says, it shall be the greater of the 2. Jay, you're the lawyer, how would you word it?
I would just,
Go ahead, Daphne, say it.
Because we have somebody here from Medway, I just wondered what yours was.
Yeah, so our fire district sets for district purposes, and so that's, if I can make a quick comment and then answer your question, is that's permissible. I wonder if you're conflating multiple taxing authorities, and you're losing picture that, you know, the Greenville Fire District has said, hey, at 5 years you'll get our exemption. The town has set it at 2 years you'll get our exemption. And you're now being posed the question, at what point will you? The active membership aspect, that is deferred to the district or to the authority having jurisdiction to say, these are the ones who would qualify under your guidelines, Greenville Central School District. Medway Greenville our district has set their property tax exemption at 2 years of service. So that after 2 years, the residents of the Medway Greenville Fire District who pay taxes to that fire district, who are also firefighters, will receive it after 2 years of service.
So in other words, this is a stackable exemption.
It is, yes. So
and we're looking only at our part.
I think we should just pick a term and stick with it. I think it would be overcomplicating the matter to say the greater of, or language like that. Given that there is roughly about an extra year commitment before you can start that clock running, I think to be considered an enrolled member, I think 2 years would be reasonable, because in reality I think that's usually about a 3-year commitment. I'm fine with 3 years if that's what the consensus is, but I would also support the 2-year. Again, just as a straight term and not the greater of. Because there are multiple authorities having jurisdiction, I think it will get complicated. I think it's better just to pick one number and apply it evenly to everyone.
I prefer to not be wishy-washy. I feel like there's too much left up to interpretation with that kind of other language. I think just a straight percentage, and I like 2, and I could be talked into 3, maybe.
Jim, your thoughts?
I appreciate Medway being here because I didn't know there was that much disparity. So what we wouldn't want to have happen is to have regulations changed to where you maybe have conflicting or maybe changing from one to the other in order to get certain percentages. So and with that in mind, keeping it simple, just keeping it at one level, I'm fine. And I'm fine with either 2 or 3. So, 2 meaning they would have the experience, the training, and then, or 3. So I'm fine either way, just like Jay.
Eric?
Before when thinking about it, it was 3 years, and I'm still at 3 years.
You had said, Dave?
I'm fine with 2 years only. And some additional thoughts. We're only talking about people that own property. People that are in a firehouse that don't own property don't qualify for this at all. And then I mentioned this in a previous meeting. One of my concerns is that if you have a firehouse or a fire district that has members in 2 different school districts, not that, not to be coarse, but not that we care about what other school districts are doing, but there will be that comparison within a fire district, and one school district is given or may be perceived as benefiting firefighters more than another school district. I don't want to get into that. But that's, I'm at the maximum percentage and at the minimum number of years. And I'm kind of shocked at what Cliff said that, if you want to retain, try to retain or try to attract people to join your organization, I think 5 years is a long time to hang on in order to get what I think is going to be, a nice but small piece of money. A thank you, but it's nothing more than that really. I wish it was more.
Sure, Cliff, go ahead.
The only thing that Greenville affects is the actual fire tax. So for the average person, Greenville, I think the fire tax is $32 average per household is what your fire tax is. So you're talking $3.
Oh, so you're saying 5 years for your tax? Okay. I got it.
Where Medway could have 2 years.
Right.
Freehold, I know there's some here, freehold, they could have,
So if we say 2 or 3 years for this exemption,
Yeah.
that would be uniform for all your members.
Right. If you say 3, that's for all.
I got it.
For the school portion of it, which would be fine. I mean, the fire district could consider redoing our resolution because we still have time to redo it and match the school.
Tucker has the mic. So as a pre-roll fire company, you have to be a member for 2 years before you become an active member. So what you're saying is 3 years, you would really be 5 years in before you got your exemption. With a 2-year probation period before you become an active firefighter. So it'll be 3 years after that, you need a math. You would join and give you 5 years.
You guys are harsh in Freehold. 2-year probation? Okay, well then I will amend down to 2 years, knowing that they're that dedicated.
It's almost $8,000 for a five-year.
Understand.
So it's a, if we get anybody to come in the door, it's all, we're down to 5 or 6 people in the field.
Okay. 3 is totally off the table for me now.
I will go down to 2 for that.
All right, can I see a show of hands then for 2? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. It is 2. All right, now we need to decide where applications for the exemption should be filed, and this one's an easy one. All right, so we recommend that the district, that the applications will be filed with the appropriate assessor's office. Everyone agree with that?
Yes.
Okay, assessor's office. And then decide when the exemption takes effect. And so the soonest exemption can apply is to the assessment rolls prepared on the basis of the March 1st, 2024 taxable status date. And on that, if I could just look at the timeline, what we were looking for is we would have, so at this meeting, the additional discussion finalized for public hearing. At the February 12th, we have the public hearing and adoption to provide the assessors, and the adoption. This will allow the assessors approximately 2 weeks for paperwork. So that would be the timeline. Any thoughts, comments, Jay?
Just clarification for everyone to make sure we're following along at home. Whatever resolution we adopt tonight, there'll be a public hearing on it in February. Opportunity for public comment, right? And then, assuming it is approved, then it would be effective for the March 1, 2024 taxable status date. So, for example, whatever the subsequent tax levy that we might approve would be. And if we don't approve it on the timeline, then it would be at least a year later, a year delay for the tax benefit, right?
That is correct, yes.
Just again, wanted to
To
make sure that we're clear on
I
what the
appreciate
pieces
it.
are.
Any other discussion related to the timing? Cliff?
Just so everybody knows, it is the responsibility of the fire company to annually submit a list of people to the assessor that qualify for the coming years for the exemption.
Okay, and then Todd, we could use those numbers then for projections and things like that. Okay, perfect, thank you for clarification.
Tracy, I have one more question.
Yes, Dave.
If you permit, I'd like to ask Cliff again. Is that qualification, is that uniform throughout all the fire districts that may be in our school district? You know, or should there be or should you be promoting a set of rules that would make it uniform for all firefighters in various districts? Who qualifies?
The state law mandates that the authority having jurisdiction, which is the fire company, submit a list annually to the tax assessor to make sure, say, Joe Blow had been there for 3 years and got the exemption when he was still here, but then he didn't show up anymore. He was no longer considered an active member. The fire district would submit his name to the tax assessor to comply of the credit.
I think to answer your question, each individual fire company decides what's an active member. Like our bylaws state what's an active member.
That's what I was getting at.
Those separate, and that way each company decides what's considered an active responding member.
Said in my remarks, I don't give the title active member out lightly. We do require a great deal of our membership to actually attain
Okay, so I believe then we have all the information necessary for
Casey,
the
we're missing
resolution.
something.
I'm sorry, go ahead.
There's also the part on the back of the sample one, or at the bottom, flipping to the back, the whole part about after a certain number of years, are we going to allow them to, like, no longer have to recertify? And then the whole part about unremarried spouses and so on.
I thought that was an automatic. It was not a decision that needed to be made.
I believe it's a state law, 20 years is a lifetime.
20 years of active service.
Correct.
20 years, and then unremarried spouse, I think we might have a choice on that. If somebody passes away, and then there was a death.
Right, this is part of the law. It's not a decision that we're making.
The line of duty death. I don't know if that's a state thing or an us thing.
So Kelly, help me understand.
Well, if you look at the questions from the law firm, at the bottom it said, follow-up question, is the death benefit section a requirement or optional in each district? It says you could include 1, killed in the line of duty and deceased but not killed in the line of duty. 2, just killed in the line of duty. 3, just deceased but not killed in the line of duty, or neither. So that to me reads that we have that option.
Do we want to talk about and pretend we have the choice or don't, or just say that we have the choice and decide if we're all on the same page with that, and then if we find out we don't have the choice, then we know we just don't have the choice later, just in the interest of getting this done tonight.
I mean, as far as I'm concerned, I like the way the sample's written. I just want to make sure everybody realizes what they're agreeing to.
Well, I agree with Kelly that the memo we have from the law firm says basically it's a choice. That we have the option of providing looks like we have 4 choices, like you said. You include the killed in line of duty and deceased, but not, there are 4 options, and one of those options is neither. Don't include that death benefit at all.
What do people want to do? Because the other thing, for the spouse has to be unremarried. So I will throw it out there, then I would do killed in the line of duty and deceased. I would include all of them. I mean, at that point, if someone is killed in the line of duty, it's the minimum we can do. And if they're not remarried, then I also do not have an issue with it. So that's my point. All right, don't all jump in and agree with me. Come on, guys.
Okay, I agree with you. If they already qualified for the exemption and are killed in the line of duty, their spouse should still get the exemption unless she remarries, he or she, or they. And then if they're killed in the line of duty or deceased, either one, as long as they're unremarried, and they've already qualified for the exemption. Right? That's what you're saying?
The way it is on the sample.
I'm sorry, say it again, Kelly.
I like the way it is on the sample, except that it doesn't say the part about deceased, so just kick it. Yeah, no, actually it does. So stick with how it looks at number 6 and 7 on the back of the sample.
So I'll read it. The property tax exemption authorized by this resolution and granted to an enrolled member of an incorporated volunteer fire company, volunteer fire department, or incorporated volunteer ambulance service shall, upon application, be continued to such deceased enrolled member's unremarried spouse if such member is killed in the line of duty, provided that such an unremarried spouse is certified. B, such deceased volunteer had been an enrolled member for at least 5 years And C, such deceased volunteer had been receiving the exemption of such property prior to their death. That's point 6. Point 7, the property tax exemption authorized with this resolution and granted to the enrolled member of an incorporated volunteer fire company, volunteer fire department, or incorporated volunteer ambulance service shall, upon application, be continued to such deceased enrolled member's unremarried spouse, provided that A, such an unremarried spouse is certified, B, such deceased volunteer has been enrolled member for at least 20 years, and C, such deceased volunteer and an unremarried spouse has been receiving the exemption for such property prior to the death of such volunteer. Is everyone in agreement with that?
I am.
I think I would vote neither. Because I think that the tax exemption, we're finding it as an incentive for the volunteer. I hear the minority, and I'm fine with that. I'm not going to fight the consensus on this. Just you're pulling the crowd for what we would put in here, and that's my answer.
Angela, if I'm going around.
I hear what you're saying, Jay, and I do understand that point, but I think I'm still on board for including it.
Eric?
Boy, you guys just bring up more questions in my little mind. Regarding this one, yeah, I'm for it as far as the wording goes for 6 and 7. As I recall in our last discussion, if 2 people are volunteer firemen persons in a residence, they only get the property break once.
I need to
No, that's true.
I need to clarify that with, yes? No, we need to clarify that with the lawyer because it sounded like, Kelly, I'm gonna push back, I need to talk to the lawyer. It's possible that 2 can get it. I don't have an answer, but I will get one. But I don't think that, it doesn't impact this.
The law reads that if both people serve, one can claim the income tax exemption or credit, one can claim this exemption, but they can't each claim this. So you get double the credit.
Correct, and that's kind of what I said, they can only claim once.
They can only claim one. The property has to be in the name of the person. Yes, if there were 2 separate properties, one in each name, and they were both residential properties, they could each claim it. But if it's one property, it's a residential property, and they're both firefighters, only one of them can claim it.
The other one can still get the income tax. I don't know, you know what, I saw something that said the opposite, so I just want to.
That's fine.
I just want to ask the lawyer so that we're all in agreement. That's all.
Yeah.
Okay.
So I'm for it as it's worded.
6 and
because
7.
I know what's going to happen. She's going to find, or he's going to find another person, they're going to be happily married and move out of district, so.
That's a copy, right?
Kelly, 6 and 7. As is? Dave, as is?
Yeah, but to respond to Jay's question, I have life insurance for my wife. I've yet to figure out how I'm going to spend any of that money.
Thank you, Dave, for that humor. Is there anything else in this that still needs to be discussed, or have we resolved everything? I think we have. Yes, we will add the clause in the end, which is the same clause that we will use for the veterans, that the ability to modify or whatever. So add clause.
So that's where I was going to go. If we're adding that clause in, if we find out that we've done it wrong, we can change it for next year.
Agreed, absolutely. Okay, so I thought that, and, all right, I just want to thank everyone. This was a lot of information. I know timing was an issue, so thank you very much for that. And
I'd like to thank you, Tracy, for setting some of our rules aside and allowing us to communicate with the public to get this done.
I found it was very helpful, so thank you.
Can I break the rules of this meeting and just, I looked out and saw all of you, so thank you again for giving up your time, but also because so many of your faces have showed up on my road for many reasons in the last few months, and so thank you guys.
All right. Kelly, I'm going to turn it over to you and to Jim. Give us an update on committees.
Jim and I haven't had a chance to talk, so do you want me to just go ahead with our update?
If you can.
Okay.
Just get back in town.
So we have met once together to start processing what committees the district has, the makeup of them and their purpose. Following that meeting, which we didn't get as far, I think, as we would hope, because there's a lot there to process. I actually spoke with Mr. Bennett and got some information from the state as well. There are some committees that we are required to have, no matter how silly we might think they are or how difficult it is to fill, we're required to have them. There are others that we have that we don't necessarily need to. So there's a lot still to gather. I don't have a firm update, but we are working on going through committee by committee. I'm doing some research on some things that the state says we need to have a certain list of committees, but they don't have to specifically be named that. So I've got actually a call into NISBA to one of our contacts there to try to get me some more information as to what the committees are that we have, and do they match, do they fit, or is there something else we need to do on that end? And then we'll come back with some more discussion on whether or not we can kind of reorganize or fill some gaps somehow.
And I think one of the elements that is the definition of what is the task of that committee, to clearly define it for that.
Exactly.
Kelly and Jim, it sounds like you're wading through a lot. So to the committee for reviewing committees, I think, thank you both for doing this.
Nothing like having a lot of chiefs and Indians, right?
That's right. You can always use another committee to at least look at the other committees.
Absolutely.
Wonderful. We, several weeks ago, had an ESSER audit, and I participated in that along with several individuals. And I turn it over to Mike Bennett because I asked him to add this to update the board on the good news.
Yeah, so as you all know, we've received federal dollars for COVID fund, for lack of a better term. But as anything goes, we were going to have to kind of show out where we spent that money, how it aligned to our plans. So about this time last year, we had notification that we were to register for an audit. There was 3 different types of audits that we were potentially going to be chosen to go through. Our audit was, we had to submit a boatload of information based on how we spent money, how it aligned to our goals, how it aligned to what we said the plan was going to go and the money was going to go for. So we spent a lot of time over the summer and into the early part of the fall with Todd, Aaron, Matt Berkshire, Scott, folks in our district office who spent a lot of time putting documents up into the New York State portal to be reviewed. So on December 19th, we had our sit down with our auditor virtually. Tracy joined us as part of the Board of Education, and we met with Allison McMahon from State Ed, who spent some time just kind of prepping us for what to expect during it was scheduled to be about 4 hours of audit time, but she started out and said that she was really impressed with the amount of work that was done prior to the actual audit and the way the work was presented and the boxes checked in regards to aligning what our plan said we were going to do with the actual information. We actually got out of the audit within about 2 hours, 2.5 hours, and some minor tweaks that we had to resubmit by December 29th. We took the time that we had to spend for the rest of that audit time and got that work together and got most of it done by the end of the week so that we could go off and have that submitted. So we were able to do that. Again, you know, I'm not too sure how often state ed sends thank you notes. We actually got a thank you note from Allison, from state ed, saying that she was very impressed with our team. You know, she's been doing this across the state and has not had audits go quite as quickly or be as thorough as ours were. Tracy thought it would be a good idea to kind of share that with the board. Our team has done an amazing job prior to me even getting here and making sure everything is, you know, ducks in a row, and it paid off, because when it came time to submit, we were able to submit and kind of meet that threshold for compliance with the state. So we will hear by end of January if the work that we submitted, little pieces that they wanted to get more clarification on, met what they were looking for, and by end of March we should have a final review, final audit. So just a great work, support of the board in making sure that you kind of held us to make sure that we were part of that process and putting together our documents for the funds at the very beginning of all this. So just thought I'd like to share that with you guys.
Well done, guys.
Yeah, great job.
Yeah.
And I was not aware of the thank you note, so that's great. Wow, I'm impressed.
Yeah.
I'm going to, let's see, we have the first reading of 3 updated policies, and just as a reminder, the policy committee meets about every 2 months and is going through a complete review. We are starting with the required policies and have prioritized those policies first. So as changes are made, then we're going through and doing the readings. What you see attached are the red lines. We have 3 policies. First one being the dogs on campus, it's policy 8160. We permitting dogs on campus and keeping with the town of Greenville. We have policy 6150, which is a comprehensive attendance policy. It's also redlined, and that is a combination of requirements by SED along with our policy. And finally, policy 6130, DASA, Dignity for All Students. And again, the red line showing some of the recommended changes on that. So that's there. Any thoughts or anything on those?
This might be weird, but it says the dog must be licensed, or no, the dog must be on a 6-foot leash at all times. What if it's less than 6 feet?
Up to 6 feet?
Yeah.
I mean, basically you don't want something that's 20 feet long and the dog's wandering around.
I mean, do you really want to walk your dog on a 1-foot leash?
No, I don't, but I just thought that was silly and wanted to bring it up in case.
Right, I think it being more a standard leash, so that either some of the retractable or some of the leashes that are very long, that an owner might not be able to keep the dog under control, so that's why the 6 foot is in there.
I mean,
So,
to your point, I think I died. Oh, gee, look at that. You can't listen to me. That's okay. It's not a big deal.
I think, so you're looking at sub 2, number 2, right? And the second sentence says, dogs on retractable leashes longer than 6 feet or et cetera will be removed. So the first sentence, I mean, it would be an easy fix, just add a couple words, right? Say, I don't remember what the process is now to change it. We don't have to go through a new reading, do we?
Well, we have 2 readings, so we could just make the change here, and then for the second reading, we're fine.
So how about the dog must be on a leash no longer than 6 feet at all times while on school property?
Works for me, no longer than. Definitely, could we add that
Does
in?
that work, Angela?
Yeah. I haven't measured my leash to make sure it's exactly 6 feet.
There you go. Any other comments related to these 3 policies? Okay, then I'm going to move us on to action items then. Okay, I need a motion to approve the minutes from the meeting on December 18th, 2023.
Angela,
Any discussion? All in favor? Aye. I need a motion to approve the, wrong page. Motion to accept the Committee on Special Education recommendations.
Eric, Kelly,
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
I need a motion to approve the personnel agenda.
Jim and Angela,
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
I need a motion to approve the senior citizens tax exemption and persons with disabilities and limited income tax exemption sliding scale.
Angela and Kelly,
Any discussion? Eric? No. All in favor?
Aye. I just went early.
Yep. I need a motion to approve the updated policy 7140, which is alcohol and drug testing of bus drivers.
Eric and Jay,
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
I need a motion to approve the Greenville Central School District Health and Welfare Services contracts for Greenville Christian School District for 23-24 year. And just as a note, there is one more contract to follow, but we didn't want to hold this up while we were waiting for it.
What is the contract that will follow?
actually, I think we ended up putting it in there.
Oh, it is in there? Okay, all right. So it did, do we remember which
I
one
think
it was?
Roxbury.
Roxbury, okay. So at the preliminary, we were creating the agenda, it was not there. So any discussion, any other questions?
I didn't grab the first and second there. Angela and Eric, thank you.
All in favor?
Aye.
I need a motion to approve the solar agreement between Greenville Central School District and Lewis Solar Partners.
Angela, Jay,
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
I need a motion to appoint membership for committees. We have the following individuals are recommended to serve on the following committees. For the Technology Committee, we have Allison Borkman and Matt Lacey.
Eric and Angela,
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Section 8, input items for discussion at the next meeting. Does anyone have anything?
I think so, but I don't know how to put it succinctly, so I apologize in advance. I've heard, I guess, comments or feedback from a few people in the community who have mentioned, my words for lack of a better know-how of how to put it, but behavioral issues in the schools. And I would like to have a discussion of what's being observed. I know that we keep some data on some incidents. I'd like to see what that is and how it compares to, say, prior years. And also just have a broader discussion about, are the comments that I'm hearing isolated incidents, or is it actually reflective of a trend or something else that's going on, and maybe tied into discussion of the code of conduct and how it's implemented and enforced across the 3 buildings. So there's a lot. I don't necessarily mean it to be as expansive as I said. Like I said, I don't know how to put it succinctly, but that's the discussion I'd like to have.
Okay, absolutely. Any other topics for future discussion? Okay, then just as a reminder, we have a couple of upcoming meetings. Our next meeting is February 12th, which is a business meeting. Then on Monday, February 26th, we have a Budget 2 meeting. On Wednesday, February 28th, we have, which is a Wednesday, normally this is on a Saturday, we have our workshop, which is a mid-year analysis. And then in April, on April 10th, we have Questar 3 annual meeting. So please let Daphne know by March 22nd if you will be attending that. Yes.
I just wanted to also remind you guys that the lobbying day for school board members through NYSBA is in February. It's February 7th. It's a Wednesday. I know everybody works, but I believe Tracy and I are both planning to attend. If anybody else wants to join us or add their weight for input, we would appreciate it.
Can you tell us more about it?
Yeah, you've been getting information about it as well through your updates every day from NYSBA, but basically on that specific day, NYSBA school board members converge on the Capitol, and we'll hold meetings with their individual lawmakers to bring up the points. It kind of plays to what Angela did with the delegate voting, the things that NYSBA's their platforms that they're standing on, but we also can tailor it a little bit to what's important to our area with our representatives. I have phone calls in to both Senator Hinchey and Assemblyman Tague, so we're hopeful that we will get some face time with either them or their staff. And then I haven't gotten far yet, Mike, but I'm hoping I could potentially ask of Sierra. I'd like to create like a little bit of a brag sheet about Greenville, or kind of like a talking point sheet that we could deliver to them that kind of speaks to our strengths here in Greenville, puts it right in front of their faces as well. So the two of us are definitely going. If anybody else is interested, you can let me know. We can make sure you're registered and all that.
Kelly, what was that date again?
It's February 7th.
Great, thank you very much. Now moving us along to the open forum, the closing open forum. Please note the state guidelines apply as stated during the first open forum. Is there anyone that would like to speak? Do we have any emails? No, okay. All right, then I need a motion to adjourn to executive session to discuss personnel matters concerning the employment of a particular person or persons.
Eric and Jay.
Any discussion? All in favor? Aye. Thank you, everyone.